In this video, I'm going to introduce you to two new activities, the if and switch. The if statement will check for a given condition, and if it is true, it'll execute a sequence of steps, and if it is false, it'll execute another sequence of steps. So let's see that in action. I have created a new process called if and switch, and have added a new sequence. Now we will create a workflow which will take your percentage of marks as the input, and if it is 60 or above, it will say you passed the exam. Otherwise, it'll say you failed. So I'll add an input dialog. I'll set the title as score, and the label will be enter your percentage of marks. And I'll store the result in a variable called score. I'll then add an if activity, and the condition will be score greater than or equal to 60. But we will get a warning here because score is a string, but we are trying to use a comparison operator which can be used only with a number like an integer or a double. Since this is going to be a percentage, I would like to convert this to a double so that it can also work with floating point numbers. So in order to convert this to a double, I'll use the method double.parse, and I will pass the score as an argument. And the warning disappeared. Now we have two blocks, then and else. The activities under then block will be executed if this condition is true, and the activities under else block will be executed if this condition is false. So I'll add a message box in then block, and I'll say, congratulations, you passed the exam. Next, I'll add a message box in the else block, and I'll say, sorry, you failed the exam. Now let's run the process. I'll enter the marks as 65, and it says, congratulations, you passed the exam. I'll run it again. And this time I'll enter 58.5. And here you go, it says, sorry, you failed the exam. Now let's say I want to go one step further and customize the pass message depending on the score. So if it is 80 or more, I would like to say, congratulations, you passed with distinction. Otherwise, just display the existing one. In order to do that, I'll add one more if statement within this then block. Now we can see it actually created a sequence inside this then block, and within the sequence it added the if activity. This is called a nested if statement because you are nesting one if inside another, and you can nest another if inside this if and go on as deep as you like. Now here we need to check if the score is greater than or equal to 80. So I'll simply copy paste the condition from here and change this to 80. And move this message box inside the else block. I'll then copy this message box and paste it inside the then block. And just add with distinction at the end. Now before we run the process, let's review what will happen. If the score is less than 60, it'll take the else block and display this sorry you failed message, and that's the end. If it is greater than or equal to 60, it'll go into this if statement where it'll check if the score is greater than or equal to 80. If yes, it'll say you passed the exam with distinction. If no, it'll say you passed the exam. That is it. Alright, so let's run the process. I'll type the score as 85. There you go. It says, congratulations, you passed the exam with distinction. Let's try again. This time I'll type 75, and it says, congratulations, you passed the exam. Finally, let's try a score less than 60. There you go, it worked as expected. Now let's take a look at a different use case. I want UiPath to ask me to enter a number, and if the number is between 1 and 12, it should display the corresponding month. For example, if I enter 1, it should say January. If I enter 2, February, and 3, March, and so on. But if you enter a number greater than 12, it should say invalid entry. For this case, you can definitely use the if statement, but you will end up using so many levels of nested ifs and the code will look so messy and confusing. So a better approach is to use a switch activity. A switch activity will execute a sequence out of several sequences depending on the value selected. On the other hand, with the if statement, you can configure only 2 sequences and one of them will be executed depending on whether the condition is true or false. So let's see this in action. I'm going to collapse this if activity and let's disable it so it will not run. You can see UiPath automatically created a new sequence called ignored activities and put this if statement inside that, and then it commented out the ignored activities. Commenting out is a programming terminology where you comment out a line or a block of code so that it will not run during execution. This way you don't have to delete parts of the workflow that you don't want to run during development or debugging, but you may use it later. Now I'll go to the input dialog and change the title to Find Month. The input label will be enter a number between 1 and 12. And I'll rename the score variable to number entered. And you can see it automatically updated here. Next, I'll add a switch activity. Now here in the expression, I'll write number entered, and you get a warning which says option strict on disallows implicit conversion from string to integer. It is basically expecting an integer, but number entered is a string. So as we did before, you can convert this to integer by using the int32.parse method, and you can see the warning disappeared. Alternatively, you can set the argument here to string, and the warning is gone. Now here we will start adding one case for each of the 12 numbers. So I'll click add new case. I'll type the number 1, and if I hit enter, I'll get this block to add an activity. I'll add a message box and type the month is January. Let's do the same for the rest of the 11 months. So we have created 12 cases, one for each month. Now we need to add one more case if they enter anything other than 1 to 12. And that is where this default case comes into picture. If the user enters anything other than these predefined cases, UiPath will execute the activities under default. So I'll add a message box and say, you entered an invalid number. Alright, now let's run the process. I'll enter 8, and here you go. Now let's try entering a number other than 1 to 12. I'll enter 50, and it says you entered an invalid number, working as expected. So I hope you got a good understanding about if and switch activities. See you in the next video.